Greetings, welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi coming to you from National Harbor, awesome Maryland, nation's capital. Having a great time here for the Air Force Association annual event. So it's been really great. Another really great thing is to have a friend of mine here, the Command Chief of 11th Air Force, Dave Wolfe. Dave, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Man, so super excited to talk this. We've been trying to set this up for months, so I'm glad our schedule finally synced and we had an opportunity to seize advantage. But before we get into this and all of your awesomeness and all the great stuff you're doing for Alaska, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate what you're doing as you continue to serve, even after you've taken the uniform off. I can tell you, you're still having an impact on people, and who knows, man, maybe you're even having more of an impact without having to worry about all this crazy mission stuff that takes up so much of our time. You're just concentrating on making people better, and it's awesome to see what you're doing. So I've been in the Air Force for 27 and a half years now. Grew up as a security forces guy. Married, my wife Danielle. We've been married almost 22 years now. Together for a little bit longer than that. We've got 7 kids, which is awesome. Most of them are grown out of the house, but they're all doing really well. We've had 4 of our own, adopted 3. It's kind of the setup of our family, and we've been stationed in Alaska a bunch of my career. So the Air Force sent us up there the first time in 1998, and we've been up there for. This will actually be, if you count up tour ribbons, it'll be my 6th tour in Alaska as far as overseas longs and shorts, because I did a short tour up there as well. It's a great place to live, great place to raise a family. It's awesome. The Air Force has been an amazing experience for us, obviously, and I think it's fitting that we're doing this today on the 72nd birthday of our great service.
Happy birthday, Air Force.
Absolutely, happy birthday. Can't wait to see what the next 72 years looks like when somebody's celebrating, 144. I'm just happy to be here, man. I hope that hope we can offer some words that somebody else can benefit from, right?
Awesome.
I mean, that's what this is all about at this point in both of our lives, is about giving back to the next generation, the younger folks. Absolutely. And hopefully we can throw something out there that somebody will value.
Absolutely. And so with that, but before we get into some of the leadership stuff, there's a lot of people inside the Air Force who don't realize the Alaska mission, everything that Alaska is, everything that Alaska does. For 11th Air Force, the 105 different hats you and your boss wear. As far as how that goes, can you explain that to us a little bit, just so people understand the gravity of how the Alaska mission contributes?
Absolutely. So if you look at a map of the United States, you'll find that Alaska is a small island by Mexico, down there in the Pacific Ocean, and obviously that's completely inaccurate, right? If you take Alaska to scale and lay it over what we call the lower 48 states, you will see that the Aleutian chain is somewhere around San Francisco, and that the capital city of Juneau, that's down in the panhandle of Alaska in the southeast, is sticking down into Florida. So I mean, it's a massive land area that has a lot of unique challenges. So for my boss, he wears 3 hats. He's the commander of the Alaska NORAD region. He's also the commander of Alaskan Command, which is a joint sub-unified command under NORTHCOM. Alaska NORAD region, of course, being subordinate to NORAD.
Sure.
So both of those hats subordinate to the NORAD NORTHCOM General O'Shaughnessy-led entity in Colorado Springs, and then all the forces in Alaska, Hawaii 15th Wing, and Guam 36th Wing are all aligned under the 11th Air Force hat. That's the OT&E hat of kind of the forces that are available to do our nation's work, but assigned to U.S. Indo-PACOM. So we've got this interesting little command gift map seam that we lay in, and we try to be elegant about that, going and taking care of readiness on one side and making sure everybody's trained and equipped to do the mission, but at the same time we're flying Operation Noble Eagle every day, right? With alert birds both in Hawaii and in Alaska to take care of any kinetic or non-kinetic threats that might pop up. It's a pretty cool place. The Alaskan Command mission is a full up joint staff, and we're also responsible for kind of being the lead advocate, if you will, for not for NORTHCOM, but underneath the NORTHCOM hat,
Sure.
For Arctic affairs, which is a whole nother different set of responsibilities that my boss has to integrate with the Alaska Native community, the Native corporations, the universities that are the leader. The University of Alaska Fairbanks is the world leader in Arctic research, and we have a lot of embed with that. And we're kind of at a point in time where we don't really talk about why the climate is changing, right? That's for somebody else to debate. Don't really care. I don't know. It might be it might be the warming of the core of the earth. It might be cow burps. I don't know what the heck it is, right? There's no way for me. We're not scientists. We stay away from that. The bottom line is that ice is melting, right? And the permafrost that goes down on the ground is not as thick as it used to be, and there are impacts to not just the state of Alaska, but to our mission set up there that we have to pay attention to. So we're on a kind of a campaign to understand that more, and then to acknowledge the fact that other countries are interested in the Arctic because now there's accessibility to perhaps as much as 30% of the world's untapped oil is in the floor of the ocean underneath what used to be the frozen polar ice caps.
Sure.
And then with the warming of the water, the fish are moving further north, and fish proteins are a huge food source for the whole world out of the Bering Strait. So most of the fish have been south of the Bering Strait. Now they're moving north. So we've got this activity going on in the Arctic now. The Chinese have recently, in their white paper, declared themselves a near Arctic nation. I don't know how that works. Beijing's on the same latitude line as Kandahar, so I don't know how you can say you're an Arctic nation, but we're paying attention to those things. And the bottom line is that we've got to be cognizant of the fact that someday we could have to fight up there. We don't know. There's a lot of places in the world where we've gone and had conflict where we didn't really see that coming, right? And we want to try to be proactive about that instead of reactive. So we've got several initiatives going on. One of which is called, the big one's called Professionalizing Arctic Service, and we're trying to kind of codify what you need to know as far as being a service member serving in the Arctic, and then try to put an identifier on you that you'll carry with you for the rest of your career, so that if we do ever have to go do something like secure an airfield in an area that's remote, but that's in the Arctic, and it's January or February. Our current system right now, as you all know, the AEF system would spin up, and a couple of squads of defenders from Little Rock would show up. That's not going to work, right? So we've got to do something to kind of change that dynamic. So we're working on that pretty hard. We've got a full joint staff on the Alaskan Command side, a bunch of great Americans working on those problems. And then the other part of the 11th Air Force hat is that we've got 5th gen aircraft in Alaska. We're getting more. It's no secret that we'll have 2 combat-coded squadrons of F-35s at Eielson that we take delivery of the first aircraft here in a couple of months. And so, here in the next couple of years, there's going to be over 100 5th gen fighters just in the state of Alaska alone, which is pretty cool. If you tilt the Earth, if I had my graphics right, if you take and look at Alaska from the Alaska perspective, which is putting Alaska in the center, you can find that within about 8 hours on a jetliner, you can be at any major capital in basically the north of the equator. Because of the ability to pop over the pole. So we're talking from Berlin to Beijing to North Korea to anywhere. So the strategic value, it's a pretty awesome map. So the strategic value of Alaska, Billy Mitchell, wasn't just a guy that got court-martialed, right? He's the father of the Air Force, and he said Alaska's the most strategic place on the earth. And I'd say that he's probably right at least for the modern times of what we've got going on. I don't know, maybe if sometime we're fighting south of the equator, some other place will be more strategic. But
right.
Our world order is built on those countries that we've got in our national defense strategy is a concern for us. So anyway, it's a pretty awesome place to be, and a good time to be there because we're on the map. In a unique way.
I'm absolutely blown away.
Yeah.
I'm sure nearly every single one of you hasn't heard that. from like the senior enlisted Air Force leader in Alaska. I mean, that, like, what an absolute amazing down and dirty for what we're providing there in Alaska. That's huge. And so let me just kind of back away from that a little bit. Like, holy amazing. So you've been developing leaders since we knew each other several years ago, and so whether it was the PME commandant, whether it's 3rd Wing Command Chief, now you're back as 11th Wing Command Chief, and all this stuff that's on your plate, everything that you just mentioned, I can't imagine how busy you are, how stressed that ends up being. So with that, what do you do as a human being to restore your soul, to make sure that you're the best Dave Wolfe that can lead 11th Air Force?
Well, I love my family, I love my trucks, and I love my Notre Dame Fighting Irish football, and that's where I get most of my resiliency. Sometimes I'm not very resilient because of Notre Dame football, right? We'll see after Saturday when we play at Georgia.
I'm a Browns fan, I know probably more than anyone.
Love me some Browns, and I'm a Lions fan, so we live in the same space, right? Pretty much. But no, I mean, I take my leave. The Air Force gives me 30 days of leave a year. I try to use that. I don't always do an awesome job at it, but I can say I've never lost a day leave in a use or lose status. When I'm off work, I try not to do too much stuff that I did find myself, phone in my hand too often at home, stuff like that. I try to put that thing away, and just you've got to be able to have a life outside of wearing this uniform. You can't be so overcommitted to the institution. And I think, quite honestly, Chachi, a lot of the folks that we find that are in that, in a state of low resiliency, call it for whatever reason, a lot of times it's because we've expected way too much out of them and they have over-delivered. And they're just at a deficit, for actually taking care of themselves. And then sometimes, it happens, they retire, and then all of that expectation is gone, and then it's okay, now what? And that's why we've got such a veteran problem with homelessness and suicide and everything else. I think people are looking for two things, quite honestly. I think people are looking for fairness, and I don't mean that like fairness like as in everybody gets a trophy or something like that. Fairness in like spreading the good deals and the bad deals in a way that at least we're trying to be equitable.
Right.
I think if people look around and they see, I'm getting a bad deal, but I saw Chachi get a bad deal too. He's had a short notice deployment as well. I'll take this one. If we can see some equity there, people can survive that. They can live with that, and then they've got to be able to feel like they can have a life outside of what we're doing. It's the most important job in the world, I think, but you got to be able to have a life outside of that.
And the fairness thing is absolutely huge, and one of the things that, and I ended up making a snarky comment, because there's, you probably work for him too, those bosses, something happens and I complain, hey, this isn't fair, they say, life isn't fair.
Yeah.
I now have a nickname for those people. They're called losers.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a pretty good name.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and like, just because life isn't fair doesn't negate our responsibility as leaders to make it as fair as possible.
Exactly.
And Chief's assignment cycle, firm, fair, consistent, right?
Yeah.
So that's what. So I'm a huge believer in fairness. And so how does that work? How does that work for you as a leader when you're trying to care for somebody, but you're trying to care for your people? You've got people in Alaska and Hawaii and Guam. What do you do to maintain that communication and maintain these relationships?
Yeah, so, I'm not going to woe is me. I live, I think, in the rarest place on the planet. It's paradise up there, and then I can go to the other two paradises, right? To go see folks. We were just in Guam a couple weeks ago. I'll be in Hawaii next week. Like, I got, charmed life, right? I'm well aware of that.
Service to sacrifice.
Hey, I'm a fortunate guy. It's amazing to have that ability. And it's tough. One of our wings is across the date line, right? So it's not. I haven't thought about that. Are we the only command that has across the date line? I think it does. Yeah, it's got to be PACAF. 11th Air Force. So that makes it tough. Makes it unique. You just got to try to stay connected any way you can. I believe in using all of the tools that are available in the arsenal, right? So I try to have a good social media presence. I try to I fish for people on social media, right? To try to go get them to connect them to what we're putting out there. and I'm kind of aggressive about it. I think all my friends are like, oh great, Dave's got a new job. There's the request from the now his next Facebook page for his next CMSgt gig or whatever. Yeah, sorry. I want to try to connect to people. I think it's one of the most important things we can do is to let people know that we're here. And I get a lot of I've solved a lot of problems via Facebook Messenger, or messages that I've gotten directly on my page. So I think it's super important. Getting out to the bases is tough. Got to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money. I'd love to go to Guam, from October to March. It'd be awesome, or Hawaii. But we've got to try to do our best. And the boss has a pretty heavy travel schedule too, between DC, Colorado Springs for half stuff, joint staff stuff, and then Northcom stuff, and then we've got the PACAF side to take care of too. But got to try to be home when you can, and when you're home, be home.
Yeah,
be home
present,
for the people.
be engaged.
Yep.
Like you were saying, phone down. Just kind of be there. And so with that, based off this phenomenal mission that you have across such a huge landscape, when you first joined the Air Force, could you have ever imagined that you'd be doing this?
Chachi, when I joined the Air Force, man, I joined the Air Force to get out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I went to a orientation for the local Grand Rapids Junior College that I was going to go to, because I didn't have grades to get into a full-time university, so I was just going to go do kind of what everybody else was doing. So I showed up at this orientation, and it was my dad had paid my tuition. I had books, I had a schedule, everything was done. I was going to school. School started like the next week. And I sat down in this big auditorium in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I looked around the audience, and it was like everybody that I had just graduated from high school with was in there. And I panicked, straight panicked. And I was like, man, this is not going to be college. This is going to be grade number 13, and we're going to just be doing all the same stupid stuff we were doing last, because I wasn't super engaged in my high school experience academically. I was there for social reasons and just to survive, really at the end of the day. So I went and picked up this thing that you may remember that we used to have called a payphone, right? And I stuck some change in it, and I called my dad and I said, hey, I'm not going to waste your money or my time. I'm not going to college. And he's like, what are you going to do? I said, I think I'm going to go join the Air Force. And he said, okay, don't tell your mom until after you sign the papers, right? So that was it. My dad was actually in the U.S. Army Air Corps, so
nice.
There was never a doubt if I was he was in the Air Force. 72 years ago, when the Air Force became the Air Force, my dad was in it. He was in the Air Corps, and then was in for another 18 months or so after the Air Force became a separate service. So that's kind of where it started. Man, I didn't have goals or aspirations, or I wanted to get out of Michigan. I love to ski, so I put all Colorado on my initial dream sheet. They sent me to Cheyenne, Wyoming, 7 miles from the Colorado border, so they gave me basically what I wanted right off the bat. Although I didn't even know where Wyoming was. That's where I met my wife. But no, I did not ever see, how it is when you first come in and you see that chief and you're like, man, that dude's old, and I can't, I hope I don't have to talk to that person, because I'm scared to death, right? So,
yeah.
So no, absolutely not, and still today it's just like, I just shake my head like, really? And I know if any of my friends from back in the day are watching this, they're like, yeah, us too, right? Like, how the heck did that happen, right?
Air Force keeps screwing up.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know. You hang around long enough, they let you help run larger portions of the organization for reasons that you don't understand, right?
But the thing that I love about your career, and then I love that you went from PME commandant to command chief, and so for whatever reason, I'm not sure how you see it, but getting to shape the young hearts and minds of our middle tier warriors to leading the senior warriors inside that base and that organization, that had to be awesome, because you would have known so much of the wing and such a personal feel for everything.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then that experience being the commandant at the Elmendorf Community Center, I was an instructor at the same school for 4 years as a staff, or as a tech and a master too. So got to be the principal of the school I used to teach at, basically, right? Which was, that's stupid, that's crazy. I never would have thought I would have that opportunity. But I've just had honestly just such a string of amazing people that have looked out for me, you know, and that's really what it's been. I mean, I just ran into one of them, you know, yesterday. General Brian Bruckbauer was the wing commander that gave me the opportunity, you know, to be in the squadron there with him, and then moved over and was his PME commandant when he's the wing commander. You know, we had challenges, you know. I mean, there's a couple times he'd come in his office and be like, "Hey man, what are you doing over there?" You know, and I had to, you know, lay stuff out for him, and he allowed me to, you know, make mistakes and learn from them and you know, stay on track. And you know, General Corcoran, who hired me into the 3rd Wing to begin with, you know, just an amazing leader. And then, you know, I mean, you know, I could go back in the, you know, I could talk for the entire time we were on this podcast to give credit where credit's due at the end of the day. You know, I mean, I've made a lot of things have happened for me in my career. I would say most of the time it's just a good chief, a good supervisor, a good commander. Somebody said, "Hey, you ought to do X, whatever, name it," right? And I've just been, I don't know, maybe I was blessed with a spirit of obedience on that side, where I was just like, okay, I'll go do that. You know what I mean? Because that's you're older than me and smarter than me, and I'll just do it. You know, how am I going to figure this out for myself? I'll just do it your way. And I think it's kind of the foundation of being a good follower too. Is, you know, obedience isn't dog training.
You bet.
It's doing what you're told and following the guidance of the people that have, you know, try to learn from their wisdom instead of trying to make your own mistakes.
You know, and that's one of the pet peeves that I've mentioned on the podcast before, is that, you know, we talk about military discipline. The vast majority of it isn't discipline. It's straight obedience.
Exactly.
You know, and so which isn't bad. Let's just be honest with ourselves. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you're of a similar mindset when it comes to that. We're going to take a break right after this question, but when we come back from break, I want to talk about some of those mentors and some of those opportunities, because I'm afraid that some of our people don't see those as opportunities when they get presented to them, and it's more of a challenge, or hey, I want you gone kind of thing. So we'll talk more about that. But before we go into a break, what is one thing that you would tell any aspiring leader for them to find success?
Make it about the people. The mission, like I don't worry, you know, if I'm thinking about work, you know, at night, you know, laying in bed, I'm not worried about whether or not our planes are going to take off, or whether or not the food's going to be ready at the DFAC, or whether or not, I mean, yeah, we got problems in those areas, obviously. Things, you know, people say, oh, the mission never fails. Sure it does. You know, it does. Sometimes we don't fly when we need to, right? Sometimes the mission scrubs or whatever, and it's something we could have prevented. You know, we gotta look at those things. What I do worry about is that there's someone in my formation or somewhere else that's living in a toxic environment, and they don't know what to do. They don't have the tools necessary, the training, the education, the experience, whatever, the intestinal fortitude to do what needs to be done about it. And we don't know about it, so we can't do anything about it. That's the only thing that worries me. So you have to make it about the people. You have to be able to spread the word through the relationships that you build, that you're accessible, that you're approachable, that you will help when the time comes. But if you're not aggressive about that, folks aren't. People don't want to tell you that things are bad.
Right.
You know, we're you know, I mean, what's the last words of the Airman's Creed? I will not fail, right? I mean, nobody wants to be that person, you know. So you've got to make it okay for folks to come and say, hey, this stuff isn't right, and they've got to know that you're going to do something about it. So you got to make it about the people.
Phenomenal words to take us into our first break. We'll be back here in a little bit with the Command Chief of 11th Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant Dave Wolfe. Welcome back from break. We talked just before break about some of the cool opportunities that your past leaders, some teammates, supervisors that had kind of given you. So with those mentors, with those influencers, who was the most impactful, or why were they the most impactful? Or do you have any good stories that really hit home about people who really cared about you?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. I mean, I would be. I think a lot of people chicken out on like naming names because they don't leave people out, but like there's like Gary Langford was my very first supervisor, 2.5 years, you know, had to put up with my crap, you know, as a young person, you know. I mean, I had John Turner was my boss as a cop for a while. Guys like Mark Canfield, who retired chief, who's an amazing human being, was my boss at the PME Center. And the commandant there was Tim Carroll, a guy who went on to be the 3rd Wing Command Chief. He's a five-time Wing Command Chief. This guy, was the one who kind of set me up to say, all right, what are you going to do with yourself in the future, and what does this look like, and here's how you get there. Kind of map things out for me. He's predicted almost every part of my career for the last 15 years. It's ridiculous. He predicts the future. It's amazing. They all taught me different things along the way, but really at the end of the day it was about their involvement and the fact that they just put themselves out there to care about somebody else besides themselves, because you don't get that with every person that you work with, right? Everybody's at a different point in their life when you come into it, and you never know what they're dealing with and how they're doing it. I'll give you a couple small examples. It's not, you don't have to be this, people think they've got to be K-Wright, and I just spent an hour and a half listening to K-Wright speak, and nobody's ever going to be K-Wright, right?
Right.
I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. He's an amazing leader, but you don't have to be that. But you have to be present, and you got to be paying attention. And if you're doing that, you can do small things. I'll give you one story. It might sound like something stupid, but do you remember when we first got the new service dress and there was no name tag?
Yes.
And then we said, oh no, we're going to do the silver name tag, right? But then there was a break-in period, right? You could wear it if you had one, but you didn't have to. And so anyway, John Turner, one of the guys I just mentioned, he was my boss. He was a Master Sergeant. He was my flight chief, and he was getting ready he was being screened to be a First Sergeant. And back then there's no DSD. It was kind of back to the way we are now with command chiefs being involved. But basically the command chief had to think, all right, this guy is the guy I want to be. And then they would put you in the shadow program, and then you would either make it through that or not, based on, that was the screening process. So he was in that process when this story takes place. So he's being looked at as, do we want this guy to be, one of our leaders in the triad of one of our units, right? Big deal. So he had put me up for an award, and we were going to a banquet, a luncheon, the next day. And I get a phone call from him that evening, and he's like, hey man, do you have the new name tag for your service dress? And I was like, you know what? I haven't ordered one yet. I don't have it. And he's like, okay, cool, thanks. That's all I needed. Bye. And he hangs up, and I'm like, okay, what the heck's that all about, right? I'm like, awesome. And my boss knows that I don't have my stuff together. That's great, right? So we show up the next day. We go to the luncheon, and I don't even remember what happened to the luncheon. I don't even remember what award it was or whatever. But I remember this. John Turner was not wearing a name tag. So I asked him, hey boss, why did you call me last night about what's up with the name tag question? And he goes, well, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't I don't want to make you look bad. So I've already got my name tag, but I didn't wear it because I don't want you to show up and have, you there without one and me with one, and someone to see that contrast and think that you don't have your stuff together. And I was like, at the time, I don't think I really thought too much of it, but as time went on and I kind of put some perspective on that, here's a guy who's being looked at, it's a small thing, but you never know. You don't know what people are judging you on based on, their evaluation of you. And he was willing to not be his at full, speed in the eyes of everybody around him, so that one of his subordinates didn't have to feel uncomfortable with that. Little things like that. That show people. After he did that, and I kind of realized what happened, the guy had already done a bunch for me. I was already on the bus. He'd already taken care of me in so many ways. But just little things, little things like that can really make a big difference. So pay attention.
Yeah, it's simple, and how just and the thing that I'm always saddened by the amount of appreciation I would get from doing some of the simplest things to people, even as a command chief, or do something. I'm like, oh, thank you. I'm like, this is standard. This should not blow you away. She's like, well, haven't had a lot of good leaders.
Exactly.
And so I absolutely hate seeing some of that stuff. But as you're talking about good leaders, you kind of hit into it your first 2.5 years that your boss had to put up with some of your stuff. I'm fond of saying on my podcast, I tell our viewers and listeners that I had gotten kicked out of a country and kicked off of deployment. You said you got in trouble. Would you care to talk about that and,
sure.
and how you continue to find success after that and persevere?
Absolutely. So my first year in the Air Force was not a good one. I came in the Air Force, I kind of figured, like, the lifestyle to me was like, oh, we're in college, but we just don't go to class, we go to work, right? I mean, we were just living in a dorm. It was a college life. I mean, that's all there was to it, and we were tearing it up, and we weren't 21, so that caught up with me, right? So I mean, I've got my first year in November. I came in February, so I'd been not at the base probably another 4 or 5 months that I've been at my first assignment at FE Warren. 1,500 cops at FE Warren doing a giant nuclear security mission and just awesome stuff. But we were partnering it up just like probably a lot of folks did at that age and still do. It's kind of the point you're at in life and what folks do. So yeah, man, Article 15. Right off the bat, first year, got busted drinking underage. The timing was horrible. We had a kind of a remount after coming in from the missile field, and that weekend we had like 4 DUIs in the unit. We were a group, so we had an 06, so the 06 called us all in. We had one of those DUIs was a rollover Jeep accident, and there was a young lady in a coma from it. So there's like he was pissed, right? There was a bunch of like buffoonery going on, right? So this is on a Monday. We get a remount. They read us the riot act. Basically, they tell us the next people that get in trouble, we are just absolutely going to hammer you, right? This is what's going to happen. So it's a Monday. It's November. Bills 49ers Monday Night Football, right? And this is 1992, bro. Like, that's a huge game, right? And two of the best teams in the league. Joe Montana, Jim Kelly, right? And so we went and loaded up on as much alcohol as we could, and we were hanging out in the dorms. And a buddy of mine left and had a ride to go get some more beer, and decided on the way back that he was going to drive the car because he didn't like the way that the person that was sober was driving it, and he got popped at the gate for a DUI. We were in his room, so they came and busted us off, right? So we all get in trouble. And really at the end of the day, the only crime that I committed was drinking underage, which most people you'd think, oh, you're just gonna get a little wild. But because of the timing of it, the
hammer came down.
The group commander threw the book at us, big time, and we ended up Article 15, busted down from lost my one stripe, and then a little thing that a lot of folks might remember called correctional custody back in the day, a little CC time, right?
CC?
Oh yeah, went to jail for 24 days. The only reason I got out in 24 was because that was Christmas Eve, and they didn't want to keep it open over the holidays. The guys that run it could go home and stay with their families, right?
Wow.
So yeah, man, a little retraining for basic training all over again on steroids. Basically, is what CC was. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But best thing that possibly ever could have happened to me. I was not engaged in the job, in the lifestyle, in the Air Force at the level that I could have been or should have been. And that was the proverbial wake-up call of, okay, I don't want to go back home, and I'll do whatever's necessary. That's where I learned that, hey, just do what the Master Sergeant tells you to do. I had a Master Sergeant Flight Chief named Nick Liberti. I hope Nick watches this thing. Like, I owe that guy a ton. He came to see me in correctional custody. Hey, man, just do what they're telling you to do. We're going to get past this. Give me the encouragement I needed to make it through that. And sure enough, that's what happened. He took care of me to the point where, I just basically did everything he said. So get out of correctional custody Christmas Eve, 1992. Just over a year later, in January of 1994, I win Airman of the Year for my squadron for 1993, right? So, and I'm not special, man. It's not about me. Like, it was just doing what those guys asked me to do. And that was kind of the, okay, now I understand what's going on here, and I understand the power of a good Master Sergeant, a good leader that can help you out, and my supervisor as well, Gary Langford, just having mercy on me and not throwing me away, because they could have very easily.
Right.
Where were we at in 1992? We had 600,000 people in the Air Force. The Cold War was over. The next year is when we did VSI SSB and got rid of as many people as we possibly could. to downsize. I was easy chopping block. Easy. Slam dunk. Get this guy out. No problem. And they kept me, you know, and I owe those guys for that still.
See, I like hearing those stories. Like it was again one of the best things that happened to me, and it's really odd because, and I loved how people in the past have explained it. It's the difference between when I enlisted in the Air Force versus when I joined the Air Force.
Absolutely.
You know, and
totally different day.
you know, and for people, this block of time can be years. I know it was for me.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes you have to rejoin.
Yeah.
Even after you've joined, right? I mean, it's not a constant glide slope going up, right? It's going to be ups and downs.
And then life happens, and frustration happens. So what have you been able to learn through that experience and share with people when they come and talk to you about that, about the perseverance and moving past and trusting your leaders and caring for the other person?
Yeah.
What is like the biggest problem that people talk to you about today?
Yeah.
That probably isn't happening on the front lines.
Well, I think when you're dealing with folks that have gotten in trouble and you're trying to help them get past that, it's really hard to understand that, hey, things are gonna be better, right? There's a bottom point, you know, that people get to. That you gotta be patient, right? You gotta be patient with the people around you. You gotta be patient with the system to let the system work the way that it needs to work, whether you're talking about the disciplinary system or just the recovery process as a whole. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some things that happened, for example, in that year of 1993 that made it possible for me to even be eligible to be able to be considered to be the Airman of the Year. We got a new chief, a new squadron commander, and a new first sergeant. You know, that I didn't have nothing to do with that. That wasn't me. That just happened. So those guys didn't, you know, they cared about it. They knew it happened, but they were giving me a clean slate, you know, because they knew that's what they should do as a leader, I guess. I don't know, or maybe they just weren't paying attention. You know what I mean? Who knows what the deal was there? But I was given that opportunity, and you have to acknowledge the, you know, what I think. You know, I've got a spiritual belief too that, you know, things happen for a reason because of a higher power. But you know, even if you just believe that, sometimes it's just you're just lucky. You know what I mean? So you've got to have some fortunate things happen around you, and sometimes you're unlucky with timing and stuff like that. So you know, it's tough. So people, you know, you got to be patient. You got to be patient, and you've got to understand that you're going to get people are judging and evaluating you. You know, and that's hard. It's really hard.
You know, the greatest definition of luck that I've heard, and I've heard General Goldfein say it, you know, in the recent months and years, is that, you know, luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Yep.
You know, so if you're always prepared, the luckier you can get.
Absolutely. You
know, as far as that goes, like there are a lot of people who I see it, they just sit back and kind of like, oh, woe is me, while the person next to them, they're just doing those extra little things, and then when an opportunity pops up, this other person's prepared, and I'm not. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But I wasn't well-rounded. I wasn't doing those small little things to make me competitive or anything like that.
Now, and there's a biological factor to all this stuff, right? I mean, how I feel about you when I hear your name means something. You know, and if based on our relationship and your actions and our interactions, I'm gonna have a feeling when I hear your name. You know, and I'm gonna have I'm either gonna act or not act based on what that feeling is. Right. So
it's So where you sit right now, you are easily out of the 290-ish enlisted men and women in the United States Air Force, 290,000-ish, right? So you're easily in one of the top 50 positions inside the United States Air Force, if not top 30-ish, right?
That's insane.
Right, it's as far as that goes. So from what would you like to tell anybody in the military, inside the Air Force, or civilians that, you know, so your circle of trust is very impactful based on your position with the other NAF command chiefs, the NAJCOM command chiefs, K-Rite, all that stuff. And what would you like to share with people that you know about your inner circle and what it's like being a chief serving at these highest levels?
Yeah, I would say this. I can say with 100% absolute rock solid confidence that the people that are leading at the MAGCOM and the NAF level and at the career field manager, level in our Air Force are some of the most caring, engaged, smart, thoughtful, deliberate leaders that we could ever possibly have. They really are. They listen. They absolutely care about what's going on out there. And it's not lost on me the fact that, hey man, I've been in a squadron now in 5 years, working at a squadron level. There's atrophy there. There's the little things about that job that I don't remember, right? The way that maybe I should, right? And we talk about that stuff, and we try to make sure that when we're discussing big things that we're going to do or big ideas that we have, that we keep that in mind too. That this isn't about us. It's about the folks that are going to have to live for years with the decisions that are being made. And I know that Chief Wright and his team at HAF they're always thinking about that stuff. So I would say this: the United States Air Force is as well led as I've ever seen it.
Agreed.
No doubt.
Agreed. Having been on the squadron for 5 years, so obviously there's things that you've forgotten or whatever, but there's also things that that you haven't had to experience at squadron level. For how we're doing some of the DSD stuff now, or the EPR stuff. It was weird, when I did my last year back as a TAC P, being in the squadron and having to do that stuff that I didn't have any experience with at the time. That was very interesting. Yeah. And so I went to a lot of online resources. I went to a lot of social media to hear people's stuff out there. And we've had a conversation before about how much I appreciate your presence on social media. Not only just the presence in and of itself, but based off of the tyranny of distance, right? Indo-PACOM, but just with everyone, all your people throughout Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, trying to reach out to them. You seem to be one of the innovators and or early adopters of social media, and applying that as a constant thing that you use to communicate to your airmen and teammates. How did you do that, and what would you recommend to other leaders out there to help follow in those same footsteps?
I mean, really, how did I do it? I just jumped in. I mean, I think the first thing about social media is you either have to be in or not. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. It's hard. It's something you got to do consistently. And I'm guilty. I have not. There are weeks where I post nothing, right? Just for whatever reason. But really, you have to. So, and I'd be careful saying this because I don't want to put. I don't want anybody to think that that like you can't be a good leader if you're not on social media. Like that's not true. But here's what I do think. There's things that we say as older people that we think mean one thing, and they mean something different to the younger generations, right? So I think when people say, "Oh, I don't do that social media thing," I think what the younger generation here is, they hear is, I don't do people, because that's the space they live in, right? So if you're gonna say I'm not a people person, I mean, and I'm not saying that they're not people persons, but that's how it's coming across, right? So you're gonna lose some people in that. So I've just decided that if I'm gonna be relevant, I gotta be in the space of where the folks are at, right? And the folks are they're there, right? That's where they're, and I can reach them anytime. I'm reaching them when I'm sleeping. I mean, that's pretty cool, You couldn't do that as a leader in the past.
Absolutely.
You couldn't reach people while you were asleep, right? So that's pretty awesome. It's a powerful tool if you can use it for the powers of good, right? And I honestly have zero experiences where it has been negative. I can't tell you a time when, oh my gosh, now have people posted things on my page that I was not comfortable with them posting? Yeah. Absolutely, you know what I mean? There's been things, but you know what? They're saying them as well. And at least now I know, right, that they're saying it, which is a really positive thing. The other thing about being on social media is that you can understand a whole bunch of other things that you would not be able to understand. The information that I receive being on there and to understand what people are thinking and what they're concerned about is awesome. I've learned about grandmas passing away, babies being born that I didn't know about, babies being lost in tragedy, things that have happened for folks. And man, it makes all the difference in the world just to be able to reach out to those folks, or when you see them the next day at work, like, hey man, come here, what's up with your divorce? Like, I didn't know that was happening, bro. Like, why didn't you talk to me about that? You know what I mean? Like, what can I do to help you? Stuff like that. It makes a huge difference. Had the opportunity at Northcom Commanders Conference a couple months back to sit down for about an hour and a half with Mike Krzyzewski.
Really?
Yeah, amazing. Like, and we didn't know what was happening. Like, General Shaughnessy just popped him into the conference room, and we were like, holy crap, right? So he talks about, he's 72 years old, and he said, look, I'm a 72-year-old man. Last night I was texting with 4 17-year-old boys. He's like, people might be uncomfortable with that. Like, that's like that, like in another time that would have been like totally taboo, but that's what I have to do. These are the 4 best high school basketball players in the country, and I need them to come to Duke so we can win the national championship. I mean, that's how this works, right? So he said something that really, really, I think, framed this up well. Is he said, you have to change the way you are connecting to people, but you don't have to change what you're connecting them to, and that's our values.
Gotcha.
So keep that the same, but you got to go to where they're at, whatever that is. And who knows, what does that look like 5 years from now? I don't know.
Right, yeah.
If you'd have told me, even 5 years ago that we'd be doing all this social media stuff, I'd have been like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. I'm not comfortable with that, but where are we going to be in the future? Who knows? So be ready.
Dang, so that's huge. We'll end on that note. Coach, a quote from Coach K.
Yeah,
to do that. So that's huge. Chief Wolfe, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule today and meeting great with senior Air Force people to spend time here with me and all our viewers and listeners here at the Cape Lead Revolution. So I appreciate it. Great seeing you as always, my friend.
All right, brother.
And we'll catch you back here next time on Cape Lead Revolution.